41 কিন্তু আমি তো এখানে এই যে 49 হলো এ পর্যন্ত 49 কে পেলাম। তোমরা কি 78 দেখতে পাচ্ছ, 81 দেখতে পাচ্ছ?
ম্যাম এখন আমরা 82 দেখতে পাচ্ছি।
82 দেখা যাচ্ছে।
82 দেখতে পাচ্ছ? এই যে অ্যাড হচ্ছে এখানে সবার। আচ্ছা ঠিক আছে, তানজিমুল আছো কিনা? তানজিমুল
Yes, ma'am.
আচ্ছা আচ্ছা ঠিক আছে। তোমার গলা আমি শুনতে পাই না, ডাকি কিন্তু তোমাকে পাওয়া যায় না। ওকে,
Now,
already we started respiratory system. In previous class we have started respiratory physiology. Today I will continue this system. Okay, in the previous class, just definition of respiration. We started definition of respiration. Again, I am repeating this definition because this definition is very, very important for your written and viva exam. For written exam, you have to write down this definition from your textbook. Guyton and Hall. Okay, definition of respiration. Respiration is a physiological process which means the transport of oxygen from atmosphere to the cell for oxidation of the ingested food materials and elimination of carbon dioxide and other volatile metabolic end products from the cell to the atmosphere. For written exam, you have to write down this definition, but for viva, simpler form, you can tell respiration means intake of oxygen from atmosphere to the lungs and removal of carbon dioxide from lungs to the atmosphere. You can tell like this for viva exam. Okay, so the goal of respiration are to provide oxygen to the tissues and to remove carbon dioxide. That is, it maintains constant condition of the internal environment, nearly constant or near static condition of the internal environment. That is, one of the major function of respiration is maintains homeostasis. That is, it maintains the constant or nearly constant condition or nearly static condition of the internal environment by providing oxygen to the tissue and to removal of carbon dioxide from the tissue to the, that is, lungs to the environment. Okay, this is the main goal of respiration. Now see the four major components of respiration or four major functions of respiration. We can tell here four major components of respiration or functions of respiration. Number one, pulmonary ventilation. According to your textbook, please listen to me very carefully. According to your textbook Guyton, first major components of respiration is pulmonary ventilation. That is major functions. Mainly, we can tell here four major functions of respiration. Number one, pulmonary ventilation, which means the inflow and outflow of air between the atmosphere and the lung alveoli. That is intake of oxygen and removal of carbon dioxide. This means pulmonary ventilation. Number two, diffusion of oxygen and carbon dioxide between the alveoli and the blood. That is transport of oxygen and removal of carbon dioxide, transport of carbon dioxide between alveoli and the blood. This is second function of respiration. Number three, transport of oxygen and carbon dioxide in the blood and body fluids to and from the body's tissue cell. ঠিক আছে, অক্সিজেনটা ট্রান্সপোর্ট হয়ে from lungs to the টিস্যুতে যাবে এবং কার্বন ডাইঅক্সাইডটা কি হচ্ছে, it is a metabolic waste product. এটা টিস্যু থেকে লাংসে চলে আসবে for removal purpose. Number four, regulation of ventilation and other facets of respiration. তাহলে respiratory regulation by chemical regulation, neural regulation, this is also the part of respiration, major functions of respiration. So there are major functions, four major functions of respiration according to your textbook Guyton and Hall. Okay, now this is very, very important things. Alveoli. What do you mean by alveoli? Alveoli are the structural and functional unit of the lungs. That is, lungs is composed of so many alveoli. That is, alveoli are the structural. First, you have to utter here structural. That is, first structural, then functional. Alveoli are the structural and functional unit of the lungs. There are approximately 300 million alveoli in the two lungs. তাহলে দুটো লাংয়ে both lungs হচ্ছে 300 million. তাহলে each lung কত হবে? 150 million alveoli present in each lung. This is very, very important MCQ question also. Several times this question came. Each lung contain 150 million alveoli. Both lung contains togetherly 300 million alveoli. Already you finished everything in anatomy card, thorax. Okay, now alveolar cells or pneumocytes. How many alveolar cells present in lungs? Two types, mainly two types, that is alveolar type 1 pneumocytes and alveolar type 2 pneumocytes. See here, alveolar type 1 pneumocytes are squamous epithelial cells forming about 95% of the total number of cells. That is, alveoli major cells are alveolar type 1 pneumocytes. You have to remember this thing. 95% of the total number of cells are alveolar type 1 pneumocytes. Their prime function is gaseous exchange. Please remember this point here. Alveolar type 1 pneumocytes constitute 95% of the total number of the cells, and their prime function is gaseous exchange. You have to remember these things for MCQ purpose. Now, alveolar type 2 pneumocytes. These are cuboidal in nature and forms only 5% of the alveolar cell, because 95% constitution occurs by alveolar type 1 pneumocyte, only 5% by alveolar type 2 pneumocytes, and their prime function is production of surfactant. This is very, very important Viva question, and also for MCQ exam this is equally important. There are mainly two types of cells present in the alveoli, that is alveolar type 1 pneumocytes and alveolar type 2 pneumocytes. Alveolar type 1 pneumocytes constitutes 95% portion, and alveolar type 2 pneumocytes constitute only 5% portion. And prime function of alveolar type 1 pneumocytes gaseous exchange, and prime function of alveolar type 2 pneumocytes production of surfactant. But beside that, you have to remember one thing here. Please write down everybody. Beside these two types of cell, there are so many specialized cells present in the alveoli. Okay, please write down everybody. There are other specialized cells present in the alveoli. The alveoli also contain other specialized cells such as alveolar macrophages. Name of alveolar macrophage? What is the name of alveolar macrophage? Already in the previous class I mentioned you this name. Can you tell me name of alveolar macrophage? Another name of alveolar macrophage? কি নাম? কি নামে ডাকি আমরা? ডাস্ট সেল, তাই না? ডাস্ট সেল বলতে পারি। লিভারের ম্যাক্রোফেজকে কি বলা হয়? লিভারের ম্যাক্রোফেজকে কি বলি? Yes, very good, very good. Thank you very much. Kupffer cell. আর এই alveolar macrophage কে কি বলি? Dust cell. DUST, dust cell. Please write down everybody. তাহলে beside these two types of cells, other specialized cells also present in the alveoli. Write down the name of other cells. First one, alveolar macrophages or dust cell. Then plasma cells, mast cells, lymphocytes, and neuroendocrine cells. Again, I am repeating: alveolar macrophages, that is dust cell, then plasma cells, mast cells, lymphocytes, and neuroendocrine cells. Beside these two cells, also there are some other specialized cells present in the alveoli. These are alveolar macrophages or dust cell, lymphocytes, plasma cells, and neuroendocrine cell. Okay? Now, What do you mean by respiratory unit? This is very, very common written question. Very, very common written question. Respiratory unit. What do you mean by respiratory unit? This is very common written question. You have to draw this figure from your textbook 40-7. Figure 40-7 respiratory unit from your textbook. I have taken this figure from your textbook guidance. Okay, you have to draw this figure. Respiratory unit means it is the gas exchange unit of the lung. It comprises respiratory bronchioles, alveolar ducts, atria, alveolar sac, and alveoli. Already I think it is known to you that what do you mean by respiratory unit. In previous class, I have discussed with you that anatomical division of respiratory passage. We can divide respiratory passage into two parts, upper respiratory tract and lower respiratory tract. Upper respiratory tract, it is extension that is nose to the vocal cord, and lower respiratory tract from vocal cord, that is larynx to the up to the alveoli of the lungs. But physiologically we can divide this respiratory passage two parts, that is conducting zone and respiratory zone. Conducting zone and respiratory zone. Extension of conducting zone from nose to the terminal bronchiole, and extension of the respiratory zone from respiratory bronchioles up to the alveoli, that is the respiratory unit. This portion is called respiratory zone because gaseous exchange always occurs in the respiratory zone. Gaseous exchange never occur in the conducting zone. That is first part of the respiratory passage, that is conducting zone. Never gaseous exchange takes place in the conducting zone. Only in this portion air conduction is occurs in this area, and dead space are present in this area. Okay, I will discuss with you later on. Now, respiratory unit for written exam, you have to write, it is the gas exchange unit of the lung. It comprises 5 things. Respiratory bronchioles. Respiratory bronchioles. See here, respiratory bronchioles. Then alveolar duct. See here, alveolar duct. Alveolar duct. Then atria. Atria. These are the atria. In between the alveoli, atria. Okay, alveolar sac. Alveolar sac, these are the alveolar sac. Now alveoli, these are the alveoli. Okay, these 5 things: respiratory bronchioles, alveolar ducts, atria, alveolar sac, and alveoli. This figure you have to draw in your written exam. But this is, I think, this figure is very easy. See here, respiratory bronchiole. Trachea. Trachea is divided first time right and left principal bronchi, then secondary bronchi, then segmental or tertiary bronchi, then terminal bronchiole, then respiratory bronchiole. Okay, then this respiratory bronchiole, see here, respiratory bronchiole, then alveolar duct. This is alveolar, these are the alveolar duct, this branching process. Alveolar duct, these are the alveolar sac, and inside the alveoli, atrium, and ultimately these globular portion, globular things are alveoli. Okay, these 5 components of respiratory unit. Now, see here, already I have mentioned you that physiologically respiratory passage we can divide 2 zone, conducting zone and respiratory zone. See here, from trachea to the alveolar sac, that is up to alveoli, there is division. Between the trachea and the alveolar sacs, the airway divide 23 times. I have taken this figure from Ganong, 35-1. From Ganong, I have taken this figure. Between the trachea and the alveolar sac, the airways divide 23 times. The first 16 generation of passage form conducting zone, that is from nose to the terminal bronchiole, that is 16 generation present here. Okay, this is called conducting zone. Only transport of gases occurs in this area. The remaining 7 generation forms the respiratory zone, that is respiratory unit, from respiratory bronchiole up to the alveoli. From the respiratory bronchiole up to the alveolar sac, here 7 generation, and this is called respiratory zone, where truly gaseous exchange occur. In conducting zone, no gaseous exchange occur, only conduction of air occurs, that is air conduction occur, মানে এয়ারটা কি হবে, সঞ্চালিত হবে, কিন্তু gaseous exchange হবে কোথায়, in respiratory zone. This is the very important things. This is very important things. Conducting zone, this first portion is conducting zone, and second portion is respiratory zone. This is the physiological division of respiratory passage. Now, already I have said that in conducting zone, there is no gaseous exchange occurs in the conducting zone, but there is lot of function. In this zone, no gaseous exchange occur, but there is functions of this area. This conducting zone has lot of function. First function, this is very, very important viva question, and my favorite viva question. Please listen to me very carefully. All times I like to ask you this question. Please tell me the functions of conducting zone, or air present in the conducting zone. This conducting zone air is called also dead space air. This air present in the conducting zone also we call dead space air. What is the function of dead space air, or what is the function of conducting zone? Same thing. What is the function of conducting zone, or what is the functions of dead space air? Same answer, that is conduction of gases. See here, conduction of gases. First function, conducting zone, conduction of gases, that is সঞ্চালিত হওয়া, গ্যাসটাকে অ্যাটমসফিয়ার থেকে গ্যাসটা কন্ডাকশন হওয়া বা প্রবাহিত অথবা সঞ্চালিত হয়ে কি হবে, লাংসে চলে আসবে। নাও হিউমিডিফিকেশন অফ ইন্সপায়ার্ড এয়ার, আমরা বলেছিলাম হোয়াট ডু মিন বাই হিউমিডিফিকেশন, হিট এন্ড ময়েশ্চার দ্য এয়ার, এটাকে বলে আমরা হিউমিডিফিকেশন। তুমি যদি একটা মোমবাতির উপরে একটু হাত রাখো, তাহলে কি হবে, একটু ঘেমে যাবে না, একটু গরম উষ্ণতা অনুভব করবে এবং একটু একটু ঘেমে যাবে, সোয়েটিং হবে, এটাকে আমরা বলি কি হিউমিডিফিকেশন। ঠিক আছে, হিট এন্ড ময়েশ্চার অফ দি এয়ার। দেন রিমুভাল অফ ফরেন পার্টিকেলস বাই mucociliary action. So these 3 functions, there are 3 functions of conducting zone. First function is conduction of gases, number 2 humidification of inspired gas, and removal of foreign particles by mucociliary action. And always remember one thing, that there are 2 zones present in the physiologically we can tell here respiratory zone divided into 2 zones, conducting zone and respiratory zone. That is physiologically we can divide respiratory passage in 2 zones, that is conducting zone and respiratory zone. In conducting zone, there is no gaseous exchange occur. Please, you have to memorize this point very carefully here. In conducting zone, never gaseous exchange occur. But function of conducting zone, air 150 ml gas always present in the conducting zone. This is called dead space air. In conducting zone, 150 ml air present in the conducting zone, that is called dead space air. Function of conducting zone, first one, conduction of gases, number 2, humidification of inspired gas, and number 3, removal of foreign particles by mucociliary action. And what about respiratory zone? In the respiratory zone, gas flow occurs solely by simple diffusion. You have studied these things in respiratory physiology. Simple diffusion. Example of simple diffusion, you have studied that respiratory gaseous exchange. One of the important example of simple diffusion, respiratory gaseous exchange. And these gaseous exchange always occurs in the respiratory zone, that is in the respiratory unit, of course in the respiratory unit. Okay, that's all from me today. Thank you everybody. Thank you very much.